I'm a 30-year-old male who married my wife, Jennifer, last year. We live in a house that my dad said we could live in. I've lived here even before I met my wife. The house is paid for, and I just paid the property taxes. It could probably sell for over $1 million because it's a 3-bedroom house in San Diego. I appreciate my dad for allowing me to live here, but like I said, I take care of the place and pay the property taxes. My dad's been asking us if we plan to have kids, and we said no. He said that he's not letting us live there to be Ken and Barbie. It's a family home, and if we're not having kids, then go rent somewhere else. I told him we're not moving anywhere because we had made a deal that I'd care for the house and would live there in exchange. Just because it's in his name doesn't mean he can kick us out, especially just because we don't want kids. That's probably illegal anyway. Our household expenses are like $1,500 a month. We bring in like $4,000 net income. My dad's getting all crazy, saying that he's going to charge us $7,000 a month in rent because that's what our neighbors pay, or give him a grandchild. He said he'd even raise it by himself. I told my dad to keep up this craziness, and we'll go no contact. Am I the idiot for telling my dad that he can't kick me out for not wanting kids? You are the idiot. You're 30 living in daddy's house rent-free, pretending to have wealth you don't. It's his house, and you're milking it. He's taking a huge financial loss by letting you live there. If you had a kid, he'd want his grandchild to have a better life than you could afford. So I see his point that if a kid was involved, he would allow you to live there. But you don't want kids, so grow up. Stop depending on daddy, and go be an adult and pay rent and bills like the rest of us. I agree. OP is being a child. Paying the property taxes gives you zero rights to live there. Grow up. I've owned rentals since 2008, and you don't know what you're talking about concerning living there. Your dad can kick you out for any reason he wants. It's his house. You can refuse to leave and put up a fuss, but he can go do a formal eviction if that's what it takes. Oh, I find the no contact threat hilarious. I'm going no contact with you, but I refuse to be kicked out from your house. OP is way too entitled. They've been living in a house they likely could never afford, and now he feels like he owns it when they don't even make enough money to pay what the mortgage would be. OP's acting like his dad has to legally give it to him because he pays property taxes. LOL. You're allowed to not have kids, but you are the idiot because, yes, dad technically can kick you out for not wanting kids, but morally, he sucks. Morally, dad does not suck. He's giving them an incredible deal on the place to save money and help themselves out. He laid out expectations of it being a family home, and if they don't want a family, they'll need to move on. An old man doesn't need to fund the child-free lifestyle of his adult children. He's been plenty generous, and his generosity now has run out. Did OP really think it was going to be cool to play house with his wife forever in his dad's home? All while paying the bare minimum. Oh, come on. So we're just going to sit back while men control the uterus of women yet again? I went with everyone's the idiot here, except the wife, who's being told by her father-in-law, your uterus is now to be used to pay your husband's rent. And by your husband, no problem. Ignore the old man. We don't need to start looking for a new place to live. Wannabe granddaddy's demands are outrageous and idiotic. His son evidently didn't fall far from the tree. My husband's family is having a week-long family reunion in our city, and last night we hosted a dinner party at our house. There were about 40 people there, and it started at noon, since many adults came to help prep the house and the food and enjoy being together. For the most part, his family's lovely, and we get along well. The party started at 6, and everyone had a good time. Around 10, people started to make their way out. By 11, the food was being put up. Close to midnight, I went to give our toddler a bath and prepare him for bed, while my husband and some of his family were washing the dishes and tidying up the kitchen and house. A little after midnight, I heard the doorbell ring and heard unfamiliar voices and laughter. I went downstairs to discover my 20-something niece, who was still there, had invited 7 of her friends to the party without our permission, and they were just showing up because they left their city late and underestimated the time it took to drive to our places, about 7 hours. They strolled into our house with some of them not even saying anything to the older adults and asked my niece what was for dinner. I tried to shut it down and said that the party was over and it was after midnight. A girl in the group said they'd been driving for so long and she didn't want to be in the car anymore. Then another girl told my niece, without looking at me, that everything was closed, so if they didn't eat now, they wouldn't be able to eat until morning. I pointed out the gas stations were still open when my sister-in-law, niece's mom, told the group she could heat up some food for them. We got into a heated discussion, and I told sister-in-law she could leave and feed them at her house. My husband led me upstairs, begged me to just let his sister feed the group, and we argued. It was almost 2 before I could get our toddler to sleep due to the noise and the smell of food coming from downstairs. Today at lunch, another sister-in-law made a passive-aggressive comment about being a good host, so I told her directly that a good guest doesn't bring additional guests. That blew the lid off, and we argued loudly. His entire family thinks I'm being unreasonable to a group of tired and hungry kids. My husband thinks it's the stress of having so many people here that I'm overreacting and should apologize. I refuse and feel like I'm on an island by myself. Was I wrong? Wow, the audacity of those kids to show up after midnight to a family party is mind-blowing. I don't care how long they drove. If your sister-in-law wanted to feed them, then she needed to do it somewhere other than your house. 1000% not the idiot. How unbelievably rude. It's rude to bring people to a party or to someone else's house uninvited, much less that late, not to mention to someone whose house has children who have gone to bed already. It wasn't your problem how long the kids had been in the car. That would be the problem of the people who invited them to your house uninvited. And your husband was definitely out of line, not having your back on this. They're not kids. The niece is 20. They're rude adults. During the 7-hour trip, they should have stopped for food. Find a pizza place. Denny's 24 hours. The only plausible explanation is that when the niece and friends were hanging out, the group thought the idea that the adults would be worn out from their gathering and be fast asleep by the time the group showed up, who they could make free with the leftovers and booze. But doing a 7-hour drive on the strength of that kind of wishful thinking would be truly next-level stupid. Honestly, I think this probably is the most plausible suggestion, because it's nuts that the niece invited them in the first place, and it's nuts that they drove that far for a family party when they very clearly don't know anyone in the family except the niece. They really did just expect to crash at OP's house for the entire night. Well, they probably expected to spend the entire night drinking, but they sure as heck did not arrange for a hotel to go sleep in. I, female 47, have a daughter, teen, who's recently been having some issues with me. I took her to the doctor for a routine checkup, and it turns out she has a few health issues: calcium, iron deficiency, and weak bones, underweight. I also took her to the dentist and found out she had a few cavities. Naturally, we have to pay for medicines and dental treatments, and it costs a big ton. Money's not an issue for us, but I've always wanted my kids not to be spoiled and mindful of money, despite the money we have as a family. On the way out from the dentist, we were walking down the street and I told her, "You know how much we spent on that?" "X much." She said, "Oh," and remained silent. I wasn't sure if she got it or not. So since she's had multiple appointments to get them all taken care of, I would tell her how much it cost each time. I never said anything else, just, "It cost X amount this time. You see how much money we're spending?" All I really wanted was for her to be more grateful. Then while paying for her medicines, I did the same thing. Last night, my husband said that it makes her feel bad when I tell her how much money we spend on her and that she doesn't want any medicines because she doesn't want us to be wasting money. I never said or implied we were wasting money. It was for her health, so of course it wasn't all a waste. My husband said I was being insensitive to her and I should be more mindful as she's a kid. Personally, my husband has always been extra protective, so I think he's just being extra. I also don't understand why my kid spoke to him instead of straight to me. I don't think I'm in the wrong here, just that my daughter's got the wrong idea and my husband is overreacting. Am I the idiot for telling my daughter how much things cost to take care of her? You know the price of everything and the value of nothing. You're the idiot. These are not luxury expenses, and you say you're spending this money on her like it's some kind of treat or that it would be reasonable to not spend it. These are essential medical expenses, and you make it sound like a problem that she's causing you. I also would be very hurt and angry if I were her. If you're trying to make a point about taking responsibility for money, there are so many other ways you could do it without being so harsh. And I don't think these kinds of expenses should be part of teaching those lessons. Let's get down to brass tacks. It is absolutely your responsibility to ensure your child's medical needs are met. What you're doing is nothing short of abusive. OP, your daughter will grow up with a complex in which she can't ask for essential items for fear of your financial reprimanding. Teaching her to be responsible with money is helping budget, working on saving, and planning ahead. But making her feel guilty every time she needs dental work or medicine is disgusting. You are the idiot, and a mighty big one at that. I bet she hasn't been to the dentist in forever and is having all of these problems at once because OP has neglected her needs. OP reminds me of parents I saw growing up that would buy cigarettes and alcohol but wouldn't take their kid to the doctor because it cost too much. Jesus, you sound awful. Imagine if your child needed life-saving surgery. What are you going to say? It costs $50,000 to save you. Stop making her feel like her life isn't worth your money. Your daughter should invoice you for the inevitable therapy she'll need for what I can only imagine is not an isolated incident of this behavior. Don't be surprised if she's hiding her illnesses from you so you don't waste your money on her, as you implied. I, 28 female, started dating my girlfriend, Amy, 26 female, around 10 months ago. We live away from most of our family members and have little interaction with them because we're both going through residency. Amy's brother Seth, 30 male, is a single father. He was in town for a work event and left his daughter Mary, 4 female, with us for a few hours. He was late and already in a hurry, therefore it was just a stop-by visit, and I was the only one home for the day since Amy was at the hospital. I admit, I haven't been around children much my entire life, and I have almost no experience outside of hospital settings, back when I was just a med student, for entertaining a child. While we were painting, I gave Amy a bit of our homemade cake. After she had some, I realized she was having an allergic reaction, so I got our first aid kit, gave her a shot, and she immediately got better. I then took her to the hospital to recheck everything. I told her father via text, since he wasn't picking up. Thankfully, there were no issues at all. Later, when I explained the situation to Seth, he was furious. He said I should have asked him or Amy about Mary's allergies because I was staying with her alone. I said I needed to be warned about this because this was sudden and out of the blue, and Mary's nut allergy wasn't something Amy had told me about. She had been at the hospital for 30 hours when Seth left Mary with me, so she clearly was not being her 100% self. It simply never came up. Seth called me an ignorant workaholic woman who didn't care about family and left. Amy thinks I'm right and that he should have told me, but she also thinks it's pretty common to ask about allergies while babysitting children. I simply assumed if there was something I needed to know, Seth would tell me. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. It's his responsibility to tell people about his kids' allergies. If he's too busy to properly care for his child, he should at least get her a medic alert bracelet or something. And don't let him make you feel guilty. Seth is passing the buck on responsibility. It is the parent's responsibility to disclose all necessary health information to their caregiver. You sound like a great caregiver as well. You kept her entertained and responded to medical crisis with professional level competency. Seth was lucky to have you looking after his daughter. Seth failed to disclose. Seth failed to answer his phone. Side note, if this were to ever happen to me, thankfully my kids don't have known allergies as of yet. I would feel so awful for putting you through something that could be deemed traumatic. And I'd be so grateful to you for acting quickly and decisively to ensure my child got the care they needed. So kudos to you. I'm 19 female. I'm a college student, but I'm back at home for the summer. I have 4 younger siblings who are still in high school, a male teen and 2 male teens, twins, a female teen, and a nearly adult male. So this weekend, somebody my siblings know from school had a party, and they all attended. None of them planned ahead to have a safe way to get home afterward, so they called me asking for a ride. This would be fine except for the fact that I can only fit 3 other people in my car, and there are 4 of them. My siblings assumed that my sister would just sit on somebody's lap, but I said no to that idea because 1, it's not safe if we get into an accident, and 2, I don't want to give the cops a reason to pull us over. I told them to do rock, paper, scissors to figure out who was getting in the car with me, and then whoever lost would have to call someone else. But it ended up being one of the twins who got left out, so then the other twin refused to go either because they're complete babies about having to be split up. I didn't care to argue with them, so I told my other siblings to let their friends know that I had an extra seat if anyone else needed a ride. Ultimately, I drove my sister, my oldest brother, and another girl, teen, who asked. The tweens eventually got some other friend of theirs who wasn't at the party to come get them and bring them home, but then they complained to our parents about how I just left them stranded. My parents and the twins are saying I should have squeezed everybody in the car instead of offering the spot to a random person. The twins are just being obnoxious, I think, but my parents' argument is that it's more irresponsible to leave my siblings in that state at a stranger's house than to have one of them not wear a seatbelt for a few minutes. So, am I the idiot? Edit. We don't have Uber here. We are really rural. Also, I did offer to make a second trip to come back for the twins, but they didn't want to wait the 40 minutes for me to come back. That's part of their argument about why I should have just let them both get into the car. Not the idiot. They're not your responsibility. They should have arranged for rides in advance. If an accident occurred and the unelected person was injured, you would have been at fault. Your family doesn't care enough to protect you. You have to protect yourself. Also, your parents could have given a ride to the twins. I'm getting the vibe that there was a reason they didn't want to call their parents. However, you are the idiot. If you care about someone, don't ditch them. You could have waited for the twins to get a ride so you could make sure they weren't getting into an impaired driver's vehicle and to ensure you have identifying car details if something went south. If you were going to risk a minor's life, then at least never risk the youngest. The oldest of the 4 who's old enough to drive and have some independence would have made more sense, as risky as that could be based on your parents' concerns. Not the idiot. Please do remind me here. At what point did these parents get off their behinds and go get their children that they had let go out to party? Oh, they didn't. Oh no. They're being massive hypocrites for blaming OP for something they didn't do and were actually responsible for doing. OP is not a parent. Parents had to go pick them up and ground the kids for drinking. Oh dear.